In a dark cell beneath the royal palace, a woman waits. Her name is Diane. 3 months ago, she was the most powerful woman in France after the queen herself. Rival kings sent gifts seeking her influence. Nobles bowed when she passed. Her laughter echoed through golden halls where matters of state were decided. She wore silk dresses that cost more than entire villages. She slept on sheets embroidered with golden threads, and she whispered secrets into the ear of a king completely obsessed with her. Now, chained in a dungeon that reeks of mold and fear, she knows that in a few hours everything will end. Because Diane made a fatal mistake. She underestimated a queen, and that queen spent 2 years planning a revenge still whispered about in European palaces. This is the story of how love transformed into hatred, power into ruin, and how a woman discovered far too late that not even a king's passion can protect her from the fury of a betrayed queen. Prepare to learn the truth about the day Marguerite de Valois proved that patience combined with hatred can create one of the most calculated and brutal revenges in history. In the year 1622, Diane Beaumont was born with a curse disguised as a blessing. Beauty, not common beauty, but the kind that stops conversations when you enter a room. Honey-colored hair that captured light like liquid gold. Green eyes that promised secrets men would kill to know. A figure that made sculptors sigh, wishing to immortalize her in marble. And more dangerous than all of this, an intelligence sharp as a blade that understood exactly how to use every advantage she possessed. She grew up in Lyon, daughter of a successful textile merchant. She was not noble, but her family had enough money to ensure she grew up educated, refined, aware of her worth. From a very young age, Diane observed how the world worked, how powerful men melted before beautiful women, how the right word at the right moment could change destinies, how beauty, when combined with intelligence, was the most valuable currency a woman could possess in an era where almost everything else was denied her. She practiced in the mirror, different smiles, different tilts of the head, different ways of looking. It may seem cold, calculated, but Diane understood a fundamental truth. In a society that saw women as property, you used the tools available or you were used, and she was determined never to be used. Her opportunity came on a freezing winter night in the year 1641, a royal ball in Paris. Diane was 19 years old, and her family had secured an invitation through business connections. She entered that golden ballroom knowing this might be her only chance to escape an ordinary life. King Henry was present. He was 38 years old, had been married for 15 years to Queen Marguerite, had 3 children, and had a reputation for wandering eyes. But his indiscretions had always been discreet, small affairs that lasted weeks or months before he moved on. Marguerite had learned to tolerate these infidelities as part of royal life, until that night, when Henry saw Diane for the first time crossing the ballroom. Something in him broke fundamentally. Witnesses who were near him would say later that it was like watching a man drown on dry land. He stopped mid-sentence with the Spanish ambassador. His wine glass remained suspended in the air, forgotten. His eyes fixed on her and would not look away. It was more than attraction. It was instant obsession, as if he had spent his entire life searching for something he did not even know was missing. And suddenly there she was. Diane felt that gaze pierce through the crowd. She had felt men's stares before, but this was different. There was weight to it. Power. Possibility. She turned slowly, allowing her eyes to meet his across the crowded hall. And then she smiled. Not a big smile, nothing obvious. Just a small curve of her lips. A smile that promised everything and nothing at the same time. A smile that said, "I see you seeing me, and maybe, just maybe, I am interested too." It was enough. Henry arranged a formal introduction within 30 minutes. They talked. He was bewitched. She was perfect, saying exactly what he needed to hear. She admired his governance. She thought his court the most magnificent in Europe. She had always dreamed of meeting him. Sweet lies that he drank as if they were the finest wine. They danced, and during that dance, Henry decided that this woman would be his. Not just for one night, not just for a passing affair. He wanted to keep her, possess her, have her always available. On the other side of the ballroom, watching everything with eyes that revealed absolutely nothing, stood Queen Marguerite. She was 36 years old. She had been beautiful once. Her wedding portrait showed a young woman with a cheerful face, bright eyes. But 15 years of marriage to a man who never hid his infidelities had taken their toll. 3 difficult pregnancies had changed her body. Constant worry had carved lines into her face. She was not ugly, but she stood beside this radiant 19-year-old creature, and the comparison was devastatingly cruel. Marguerite had learned to accept her husband's affairs. She had made peace with it. Kings had mistresses. It was expected, as long as they were discreet, as long as they did not compromise the legitimate queen's position. She could pretend not to know, not to care. But that night, seeing how Henry looked at that girl, she felt something different twist in her chest. Cold, heavy. This was not just another passing affair. This was dangerous. This could change everything. And she was absolutely right. In the following weeks, Henry became completely obsessed. He did not try to hide it. Extravagant gifts appeared in Diane's quarters daily. Diamond necklaces, ruby earrings, emerald bracelets that gleamed like her eyes, dresses imported from Venice and Florence, each more elaborate than the last. A gilded carriage, so ostentatious it caused small riots when it passed through the streets of Paris, people stopping to point and whisper. Diane accepted everything with the grace of someone who always knew she deserved such luxuries. And she always asked for more, because each gift accepted, each favor granted, was one more chain binding the king to her. She was building a golden cage around him, and Henry entered willingly, happily, completely blind to what was happening. In the year 1642, Henry gave Diane the final insult to Marguerite. Apartments in the royal palace, not in some distant wing, not in auxiliary buildings. Rooms in the main palace, just 2 corridors away from the king's own quarters, closer than the queen's. It was unprecedented, it was scandalous, and it was exactly what Diane had manipulated to achieve. The court was shocked. Whispers ran through the corridors. How could the king be so blatantly disrespectful to his own wife? How did that woman, that merchant dressed in silk, dare accept such a position? What would the queen do? Marguerite did nothing, publicly, at least. She continued attending events, smiling when appropriate, fulfilling her duties as queen with the same grace and dignity as always. But those who knew her well noticed small changes. Her eyes, which used to be warm, had developed a coldness. Her hands, when no one was looking, clenched into fists so tight that her knuckles turned white. And she had begun spending hours in her private chapel, not praying, but simply sitting in silence, watching candles burn slowly. Diane, however, was not content just to be the mistress installed in the palace. She wanted more, always more. She began making demands that went beyond anything previous mistresses had dared. She wanted specific jewels from Marguerite's personal collection. She argued they would look better on her, that the queen was too old to wear such elaborate pieces. And Henry, completely under her spell, agreed. He took jewels that had been wedding gifts, pieces that carried history from generations of the royal family, and gave them to Diane. She wanted servants who had served Marguerite for years. She argued they were better trained, more experienced. Henry agreed, removing staff from the queen and transferring them to Diane. Each time this happened, Marguerite felt as if a piece of her was being torn away and given to another woman. But she did not protest. She just watched, remembered, and waited. Diane also began involving herself in matters of state. After her nights with the king, when he was relaxed and satisfied, she whispered advice, appointments to important positions, alliances with other kingdoms, decisions about taxes and policies. Henry, believing he was just discussing his responsibilities with someone who cared, followed many of her suggestions. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Diane was accumulating real power. The court began treating her differently. Nobles who initially had despised her as an intruder began courting her. Because she had the king's ear, a word from her could make or destroy careers. Foreign ambassadors began seeking her out discreetly. She was becoming a parallel PowerPoint to the official queen, and this was intolerable. But Marguerite remained silent, and that silence Diane interpreted as weakness. She began to be openly disrespectful. At public events, she wore jewels that everyone recognized as having belonged to Marguerite. When speaking with other nobles, she referred to the king using his first name, an intimacy that was the prerogative only of the wife. Once, during a state dinner, she even had the audacity to correct something Marguerite had said, publicly contradicting her before foreign ambassadors. That was too far for many at court. Older nobles, who remembered when Marguerite had been crowned, were horrified. But what horrified them most was the queen's reaction, or rather, the lack of reaction. Marguerite simply smiled, inclined her head slightly as if acknowledging the correction, and smoothly changed the subject. She seemed completely defeated, broken. Diane was triumphant. She had conquered everything she wanted. The king was hers. The palace was practically hers. Even the queen's dignity was hers to trample. At 22 years old, she had climbed from merchant's daughter to the most powerful woman in France in less than 2 years, and she believed, genuinely believed, she was untouchable. But there was one thing Diane did not understand about Marguerite. Silence was not weakness. Silence was strategy. And for 2 entire years, while Diane strutted through the corridors, Marguerite was working, observing, learning every detail, her schedules, her allies, her weaknesses, who she trusted, who she had made enemies with. And slowly, with the patience of someone playing a much longer game, Marguerite was building her trap. The opportunity Marguerite waited for came in the summer of the year 1644. Henry fell gravely ill during a hunting trip. It began as a simple cold, but quickly transformed into something serious. High fever that left him delirious. Violent coughing. Doctors were summoned and diagnosed a severe infection. He was brought back to the palace and confined to bed. And for the first time in 2 years, Diane found herself without free access to the man who was her only real protection. Because medical matters were the domain of the legitimate wife, it was the queen who had the right to supervise the king's care. It was she who decided which doctors would attend him, which treatments to use, who could visit him. Marguerite assumed total control with an efficiency that surprised the doctors. She was present at every examination. She supervised every medication, and she strictly controlled visits. When Diane tried to visit the first night, she was politely but firmly blocked. The queen informed her, with a cold smile, that the king was resting and doctors had ordered minimal visits. Diane protested, demanded entry, but the guards followed the queen's orders. And for the first time, Diane felt real fear. During the 3 weeks Henry was ill, Diane saw him only twice. Short visits, supervised, with Marguerite present, sitting silently in a corner, observing every word, every gesture. It was deeply uncomfortable, and Diane began to realize she might have made a terrible mistake. But the weeks of illness were not wasted by Marguerite. Far from it. During moments when Henry was semi-conscious, she spoke to him softly, lovingly, reminding him of their marriage, of their children, of everything they had built together. And then, so delicately, she planted doubts. Diane seems to be enjoying herself while you are ill, my love. I saw her laughing with young nobles in the gallery. Lies told with apparent concern. I heard rumors about extraordinary spending. Perhaps we should review the accounts when you recover. Insinuating without accusing. Do you miss her much? Because she has not asked about you as much as I expected. Poisoning the well drop by drop. Henry, weak and delirious, absorbed these words. They infiltrated his mind and took root. And when he finally recovered at the end of August, something had changed in him. He still loved Diane, or at least still desired her. But there was doubt now, small but growing. When Diane finally had proper access to him again, she noticed the change immediately. He was still affectionate, but there was distance that did not exist before. When she made demands, he sometimes refused. When she tried to influence decisions, he listened but did not always agree. It was subtle, but for someone whose power depended on total control over the king, it was terrifying. Diane tried to intensify her efforts. She became more seductive, more attentive, but the more she tried, the more desperate she seemed. And desperation is not attractive. Henry began to tire of her. Marguerite watched with cold satisfaction. Her plan was working, but she was not satisfied just to regain her husband's attention. No, after 2 years of public humiliation, She wanted absolute revenge. For this, she recruited Count Philippe de Valois, a young noble of 28 years. Handsome, charming, and crucially, deeply in debt. Marguerite discovered this through informants and saw an opportunity. She called him to a private audience. She offered to pay his debts completely, give him lands and a higher title. In exchange, he would do exactly what she asked. Philippe, facing financial ruin, accepted immediately. The plan was brilliant. Philippe would appear claiming to have discovered that Diane had another lover, that she was using the king only for position and wealth while her true affection lay elsewhere. And crucially, he would have proof, love letters. The letters would be forgeries. Marguerite had hired a talented scribe to imitate Diane's handwriting. She provided examples obtained through bribed servants. For weeks, he worked creating perfect letters with intimate details that Marguerite had collected. When the work was complete, the scribe was generously paid and then mysteriously disappeared. His body was never found. In early March of the year 1645, Count Philippe requested urgent audience with the king. He appeared visibly disturbed, reluctant. Henry, intrigued, agreed to receive him. What Philippe told him left Henry devastated. Diane was betraying him, and there was proof. Philippe produced the letters. Henry read them with trembling hands. They were detailed, intimate, convincing, and completely false. Henry's fury was instantaneous. He ordered Diane's immediate arrest. Diane was in her quarters when the guards arrived. She could barely understand what was happening. When they grabbed her, tearing the necklace from her neck, when they dragged her through the corridors while she screamed her innocence, she began to comprehend. Something had changed fundamentally, and she was in mortal danger. She was thrown into a royal dungeon, damp, dark, smelling of mold. And there, for the first time in her life, Diane faced absolute terror. For 3 days, she remained in that cell. No one told her anything. She begged for audience with the king. She was ignored. She tried to send messages. They were intercepted. The terror of not knowing was worse than any physical punishment. On the 3rd day, her door opened. But it was not a guard. It was Marguerite. She entered with absolutely perfect posture, every inch the queen. Her dress was impeccable. Her jewels gleamed. And when Diane saw her face, she saw peace there. The peace of someone who had finally achieved something awaited for a very long time. "You humiliated me for 2 years," Marguerite said calmly. "You were my jewels. You treated me as irrelevant. But I never forgot you. Not for a moment. And now you will understand the mistake you made. I did nothing." Diane choked. "The letters are lies." Marguerite smiled coldly. "True or false, it does not matter. Henry believes them. And now you will discover that you never had real power. Only the attention of a man. And attention is the most fragile thing in the world. But me, I was born a queen. And my power does not depend on anyone's mood." Diane tried to beg. She offered to disappear, go to a convent, anything. Marguerite looked at her for a long moment. "Your death will be memorable. I will ensure it is spoken of for centuries." And then she left. The sentence came the next day. Public execution. Not by quick beheading. Something much worse. Execution by wheel, where bones would be systematically broken. When Diane heard this, she collapsed completely. Her last days were of absolute terror. On the morning of the 23rd of March in the year 1645, Diane was led to the main square. Thousands gathered. Marguerite had ensured it would be an unforgettable spectacle. The execution was brutal and prolonged. It lasted more than 3 hours. And through it all, Marguerite watched from a balcony. Her face remained impassive. That calmness was more terrifying than anything. When it ended, the body was left on display for 2 days. Then it was thrown into a common grave. No headstone, no memorial. But there is one final detail. Henry, after the execution, locked himself away for a week. And there are rumors he found a letter, in Marguerite's handwriting, dated months earlier, detailing exactly how she planned to destroy Diane. If that letter existed, Henry never mentioned it, because to do so would be to admit he had been manipulated. So he remained silent and never took another mistress. Marguerite lived 15 more years after Henry. She was respected, loved, and never mentioned Diane. But in her room, locked in a drawer, was a portrait of Diane smiling, and on the back, never underestimate a quiet queen. Today, the lesson remains. Diane confused obsession with security. Marguerite proved that revenge is not served hot. It is cold, calculated, served after years of preparation. And the most dangerous people are those who smile while planning your destruction in absolute silence.